Welcome to the Expensive Coins History Channel. Have you ever held a small, forgotten coin in your hand and wondered if it carried a secret? Not just history, but hidden value. Today, we're diving deep into a coin that millions of people once ignored, spent without thinking, and tossed into drawers without a second glance. The 1993 German 10 Pfennig. At first glance, it looks ordinary, small, lightweight, simple. A coin that once jingled in the pockets of everyday Germans buying bread, newspapers, and train tickets. But what if I told you that under the right circumstances, this modest copper-plated piece of metal has reached a staggering value of $76,000? Yes, you heard that correctly. $76,000 for a coin many people barely noticed. To understand why this coin has captured the attention of serious collectors worldwide, we have to go back to the early 1990s. Germany had just undergone one of the most dramatic transformations in modern European history. The reunification of East and West had reshaped not only the political landscape but also the economic system. Currency became more than just money. It became a symbol of unity, resilience, and national identity. The 10 Pfennig coin was part of everyday life in the Federal Republic of Germany. By 1993, the Deutsche Mark was considered one of the strongest and most stable currencies in the world. For many Germans, especially those who lived through the post-war rebuilding years, the mark represented security, hard work, and pride. The coins minted during this period were not merely tools of commerce. They were symbols of stability in a rapidly changing Europe. The 1993 10 Pfennig coin carries the familiar design that many remember, the elegant oak branch with acorns. The oak has deep roots in German culture. It represents strength, endurance, and tradition. Generations grew up recognizing that design without ever imagining that one day certain versions of it could be worth more than a luxury car. But here's where things become interesting. Not every 1993 10 Pfennig coin is worth $76,000. In fact, most are still worth only a modest collector's premium. The extraordinary value lies in very specific versions, rare minting variations, exceptional preservation grades, and coins that survived in nearly flawless condition. Germany used multiple mint facilities, each marked by a small letter. These letters, such as a D, F, G, and J, indicate where the coin was struck. For the average citizen in 1993, that tiny letter meant nothing. But for collectors today, that letter can mean everything. Certain mints produced significantly lower quantities than others. In some cases, limited production runs combined with unusual minting characteristics created coins that are now extremely difficult to find in high grade. When a coin with a scarce mint mark is preserved in near-perfect condition, free from scratches, wear, corrosion, or discoloration, it enters an entirely different category. Condition is king in the world of coin collecting. A circulated coin that passed through thousands of hands, clinked against other coins, and sat in cash registers for years will show wear. The fine details soften, the shine fades, the edges develop tiny nicks. But an uncirculated coin, especially one preserved immediately after minting, can retain its original luster. The surface reflects light in a way that collectors describe as mint brilliance. Now imagine combining rarity with near-perfect condition. That is where the 1993 10 Pfennig becomes extraordinary. In the rare cases where a 1993 example from a low-mintage mint survives in pristine, certified high-grade, competitive bidding among serious collectors can drive the price to astonishing heights. Wealthy collectors are not simply buying metal. They are buying rarity, history, and the prestige of ownership. Why would someone pay $76,000 for such a small coin? Because elite collectors operate in a different world. To them, owning one of the finest known examples of a specific coin is like owning a masterpiece painting. There may be millions of ordinary versions, but only a handful that meet the strictest standards of perfection. When supply is almost non-existent and demand is strong, prices can rise dramatically. There is also an emotional factor at play, especially for viewers between 35 and 65 and beyond. Many people watching this remember using Deutsche Marks. They remember counting Pfennigs as children. They remember the feeling of independence that came with having a few coins in their pocket. The 1993 10 Pfennig represents the final decade of an era. Less than 10 years later, Germany transitioned to the euro. The Deutsche Mark disappeared from circulation, becoming a piece of history almost overnight. Coins that once felt ordinary suddenly became nostalgic artifacts. And nostalgia is powerful. When collectors who grew up with the mark reach a stage in life where they have disposable income, many feel drawn back to the currency of their youth. They want to preserve it. They want to own the best possible example. They want a tangible connection to a time that feels simpler, more stable, more meaningful. This emotional demand fuels the market. But there is another layer to the story: mistakes and anomalies. Occasionally, minting errors occur. A slight misalignment, an unusual strike, a subtle variation in metal composition. Most errors are minor and go unnoticed. But when a rare mint mark coincides with an unusual striking characteristic and pristine condition, the coin becomes something collectors describe as a perfect storm. These are the coins that spark bidding wars. It's important to understand that the $76,000 figure represents the upper extreme of the market. It reflects a coin that checks every possible box: scarcity, mint mark desirability, certified high grade, exceptional eye appeal, and intense collector demand. If you happen to own a 1993 10 Pfennig coin, the first step is not excitement. It is careful examination. Look for the mint mark. Use proper lighting. Avoid cleaning the coin. This is critical. Cleaning can drastically reduce value. Even gentle polishing can destroy original mint luster and leave microscopic scratches. In the collector world, a cleaned coin is often considered damaged. Storage matters as well. Coins kept in dry, stable environments tend to survive in better condition. Coins exposed to moisture, humidity, or constant handling degrade more quickly. You may be wondering how many of these high-value coins actually exist. The truth is very few. That scarcity is precisely what drives the extraordinary price. Most 1993 10 Pfennig coins are common, but the rare examples in top condition are fiercely protected by collectors who understand what they own. There are stories of individuals discovering valuable coins in inherited collections, forgotten jars, or old family safes. Sometimes a coin sits unnoticed for decades before someone realizes its potential. And that is why awareness matters. Knowledge creates opportunity. When you understand what to look for, you begin seeing possibilities where others see pocket change. Most people dismiss small coins without thinking twice. But informed collectors examine details, mint marks, and condition with patience. The 1993 10 Pfennig coin is a reminder that value is not always obvious. It hides in plain sight. For viewers in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, this coin carries something even deeper than monetary value. Carries memory, the sound of coins on a kitchen table, the feeling of saving for something small but meaningful, the pride of a stable currency during uncertain global times. When a coin like this reaches $76,000, it tells a story far bigger than metal and numbers. It tells a story about history, transformation, and the psychology of rarity. Collectors understand a simple principle: the past cannot be recreated. Once coins are lost, damaged, or melted down, they are gone forever. Every year, fewer high-grade examples remain. That shrinking supply increases pressure on the market. And when two determined collectors both want the same rare specimen, price becomes secondary to ownership. That is how a small copper-plated steel coin from 1993 can shock the world with a price tag of $76,000. Now pause for a moment and imagine this scenario. Somewhere in a drawer in your home, there may be a small envelope of old German coins, perhaps brought back from travel, perhaps inherited from a relative, perhaps forgotten entirely. Among them could be a 1993 10 Pfennig coin waiting to be examined. Will it be the rare version? The pristine one? The one collectors are searching for? There is only one way to find out. And this is just the beginning, because if you think the 1993 coin is impressive, wait until you hear the story behind the 1996 German 10 Pfennig coin. A coin that has reached an astonishing value of $163,000 under the right conditions. If the 1993 coin opened the door to surprise, the 1996 German 10 Pfennig completely redefines what people believe about small coins. Because this is the coin that truly shocks collectors. The one that transforms curiosity into disbelief. The one that has, under the rarest and most exceptional circumstances, crossed an astonishing value of $163,000. Yes, a coin smaller than a modern bottle cap, once used to buy chewing gum or a bus ticket, reaching six figures. To understand how this happened, we need to travel back to the mid-1990s. By 1996, Germany was standing at the edge of a historic shift. The euro was on the horizon. The Deutsche Mark was still strong, still respected, but quietly approaching the end of its reign. No one knew the exact emotional weight this transition would carry. But something subtle was already happening. The final generation of mark coins was being created. And the 1996 10 Pfennig belongs to that final chapter. Unlike earlier decades, coins minted in the mid to late 1990s carry a unique psychological value today. They represent the closing pages of a currency that defined post-war Europe. The last echoes of a monetary system that symbolized discipline, stability, and national recovery. For many collectors, late-era coins hold a special allure. They are the last witnesses of a disappearing world. But emotional appeal alone does not create a six-figure coin. Rarity does. And the 1996 10 Pfennig has one of the most fascinating rarity dynamics in modern European coinage. On the surface, millions were minted. Ordinary examples still exist in collections across Europe. But here is where things become extraordinary. Extremely high-grade survivors from specific mint locations are almost non-existent. Germany continued using multiple mints, each marked by a small letter. And by the mid-1990s, production demands, distribution changes, and collector behavior created an unusual imbalance. Some mint locations produced coins that were heavily circulated. Others released quantities that never survived in pristine condition. That difference of survival, not just mintage, is what changed everything. Because in the world of elite coin collecting, the rarest coin is not always the one with the lowest mintage. It is the one with the fewest perfect survivors. By 1996, most people were no longer saving pfennigs. The collecting culture around everyday German coins had weakened. People assumed the mark would last forever. They didn't store coins carefully. They didn't preserve mint rolls. They spent them freely. And that decision erased countless potential high-grade specimens from history. Think about it. Every time a coin is dropped, stacked, scraped, or exposed to humidity, microscopic damage occurs. Over years, that damage accumulates. The difference between a circulated coin and a flawless one becomes dramatic. By the time the euro arrived in 2002, billions of Deutsche Mark coins were withdrawn, exchanged, or forgotten. Many were melted. Many were lost, and only a tiny fraction remained untouched. That is where the legend of the 1996 10 Pfennig begins. Somewhere along the timeline, a handful of coins survived in astonishing condition. Not just uncirculated, but nearly perfect. Coins that retained blazing mint luster. Coins with razor-sharp details. Coins that looked as if they had just left the mint press. When these coins began appearing in certified grading environments, collectors were stunned. Because the population numbers were shockingly low. In high-end numismatics, certification plays a major role. Independent grading organizations evaluate coins under magnification, assigning them precise numerical grades. A tiny difference in grade can mean a massive difference in value. For modern coins, achieving the highest grades is incredibly difficult because any microscopic imperfection disqualifies them. And when a 1996 10 Pfennig appears in an elite grade bracket, it becomes something else entirely, not just rare, but elite. Now add another layer, collector psychology. By the 2010s and 2020s, a new wave of collectors emerged, individuals who grew up with the Deutsche Mark and later achieved financial stability, professionals, business owners, retirees with disposable income, people driven not only by investment potential but by memory. They weren't just buying coins, they were reclaiming pieces of their past. And when emotionally motivated collectors compete over extremely low population coins, prices can skyrocket. That is exactly what happened. Auction rooms, both physical and online, began witnessing intense competition over top-tier modern German coins. Collectors who once ignored pfennigs suddenly recognized their historical importance. Late-date mark coins became symbols of closure, the final echoes of a monetary era that shaped lives across Europe. Among those coins, the 1996 10 Pfennig stood out. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't made of gold or silver, but it carried something far more powerful: scarcity at the highest condition levels combined with emotional gravity. And when one of the finest known examples surfaced, collectors reacted. Bidding escalated rapidly. What began as curiosity turned into a contest of prestige. Because owning the finest known example of a late-era Deutsche Mark coin is not just ownership, it is legacy. A statement, a historical anchor. That is how the number climbed. Past expectations, past logic, into six figures, reaching as high as $163,000 under the most exceptional conditions. Let that sink in. A coin once dismissed as spare change now commanding a price comparable to luxury real estate in some parts of the world. But here is the most important truth. Not every 1996 10 Pfennig is valuable. In fact, most are still modest collector items. The extraordinary value exists only at the extreme top of the rarity pyramid. So what creates that difference? Three things: mint mark, preservation, and verification. The mint mark determines origin. Certain mints have far fewer surviving high-grade examples. The preservation determines visual perfection. Luster, sharpness, absence of marks, all critical. And verification, through professional grading, transforms a coin from curiosity into a recognized rarity. Without verification, even a beautiful coin may remain overlooked. With it, the same coin can become a headline. This is why education matters. If you have old German coins stored away, in drawers, boxes, inherited collections, the key is not excitement. It is patience, examination, respect for the object. Never clean it, never polish it, never assume it is worthless. Because history has repeatedly shown that overlooked coins can surprise the world. There is also a philosophical dimension to coins like the 1996 10 Pfennig. They remind us that value is not fixed. It evolves. It grows as generations reinterpret the past. What one era spends casually, another preserves passionately. For viewers between 35 and 65 and beyond, this coin speaks to something deeply personal. It represents transition, the end of familiar currencies, the acceleration of globalization, the quiet disappearance of everyday objects that once defined daily life. Many people remember the exact moment the euro arrived. The mixed emotions, excitement, uncertainty, nostalgia, the feeling of saying goodbye to something reliable. The 1996 10 Pfennig is a time capsule from that emotional crossroads. And that emotional weight amplifies collector demand. Because coins are not just metal, they are memory you can hold. Today, as the numismatic world continues to evolve, modern coins are gaining recognition in ways few predicted decades ago. Collectors are no longer focused only on ancient silver or historic gold. They are rediscovering the power of modern history, the objects that connect living generations to their own past. And that shift is rewriting value maps. Coins once ignored are being re-examined. Populations are being studied. Condition rarity is being re-evaluated. And every so often, a quiet coin steps into the spotlight and shocks everyone. The 1996 10 Pfennig is one of those coins, a reminder that rarity hides in unexpected places, that history does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers through the smallest objects. So now let's bring everything together. Point two coins. Both small, both humble, both once part of everyday life. The 1993 German 10 Pfennig, a coin that, in the rarest and finest conditions, has reached around $76,000. And the 1996 German 10 Pfennig, an even more astonishing example with elite specimens climbing as high as $163,000. Together, they tell a powerful story. A story about overlooked value, about how ordinary objects can become extraordinary with time, about how memory, rarity, and condition combine to create something truly remarkable. And maybe, just maybe, this story is not as distant as it seems, because somewhere in an old wallet, a forgotten jar, a family inheritance, there could still be coins waiting quietly, unnoticed, unexamined, carrying stories no one has asked them to tell yet. The real question is not whether these coins exist. The real question is whether someone will recognize them before it's too late. Because history has a strange habit of rewarding those who pay attention. And sometimes, life-changing discoveries begin with something as small as a single coin.